Hello and welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so happy that you are here with us for our topic tonight. We are excited to talk, to talk and to take your questions about the challenges of being single. I mean, we talk about family, we talk about marriages, we talk about so many other relationship topics, but we have never spoken about what's the challenges of being single. And we're going to talk about that this evening, or we're taking your questions. Actually, you help us to produce this program. Your questions make it happen. So my co-host, Dr. Ricardo White, is here with me. And so we want to welcome you too, Dr. White, as we are going to be talking about this topic, being single and the
Good
challenges.
evening, Sister Tante.
All right. Good evening to you again. And please put in your chat in the chat where you're watching from. I see that we have P. Mitchell, which I think is Pam Mitchell, is watching from Washington, D.C. area. So welcome. It's good to see you on here this evening.
We
So,
have Nicole from Virginia.
all right. Got Nicole from Virginia.
Clint, old-time favorite from Texas. Love the sound of that.
Clint is like he's like our number one viewer who always supports mental health today. So Clint, we appreciate you. We thank you. Jerry from San Diego. Hi, Jerry. I met
Sheena,
you. Yes.
Sheena Ford from Dallas, Fort Worth area. Okay. Hey, Sheena.
Sandy, watching from Toronto. Welcome.
Jerry Harvey from San Diego. That's my neck of the woods.
It is. It is. And I believe I met Jerry a few months ago when we were in San Diego. So
Oh, that's
welcome,
cool.
welcome, welcome.
Tandy from Toronto. And let's see. Okay, and then we have The Right Stuff for You from Florida. Nice. Okay, that's a creative name too.
Right stuff for you. Wow, yes, yes. We
Yeah,
have people
man.
watching from all over, and so we are thankful that you all are here, and we're going to be taking your questions. It's quite the topic. It's something that we talked about last week after we were doing our second part on family, and we just thought, you know what, singles, uh, they don't get as much attention as married people do, especially when you're talking about it as a Christian or in the church, just topics. I mean, yeah, you have singles ministries, things like that. But just to talk about directly what it's like to be single when everyone else around you is either in a relationship or in or married, how challenging is that? Or, what? Is it challenging at all? Some people choose to be single, right?
Absolutely.
Paul chose to be single. I'm going to the Bible.
Yeah, Paul chose to be single. I mean, and I think
Yeah.
there are some people who, after they've sometimes dated, maybe even married, sometimes they just like their peace and quiet so much. They're like, look, rather than having any drama, I just rather have a setting that I can control. And I've been
So,
there, I've done that, and I'm all set.
so you're saying marriage is drama, Dr. White?
You even know to laugh. You even know. Yeah,
Yeah,
marriage is drama. There's no
it
question
can
about it.
it can be. It can be a challenge. It's funny because I asked my husband the other day, and it was no specific reason why I asked, but it really was random. I said, "Would you say, what would you say is? Do you feel like marriage is hard? Is it difficult? What would you say?" He said, "This was his answer. He said it's easy and hard all at the same time." That's what he said.
That's profound. That's
That's what he
profound.
said.
That's profound. I think, yeah, I have to agree with that. I was really interested in his response because he's such a wordsmith. So I was looking forward to seeing what he did with that.
Well, it was so random when I asked him, and he just was like,
You
"It's
caught him
easy and
off guard.
hard." Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no question. You're talking about the merger of two separate lives being
Right.
brought together as
Right.
one.
Right.
And of course, you're going to have challenges. But
Mhm.
well, what I would say is to make sure that you get your question answered, I would make sure that I start putting my questions in
Yes.
the chat,
Chat.
because you don't want, because it starts to really get hot, especially as the time is about to run out. And then it's like you don't want
Yeah.
opportunity.
Then we don't fully get it. Yeah. Well,
Right.
we don't want that to happen. We don't
Now,
want it to happen.
I will also say our producer loaded us up with um, some fantastic
She
questions.
did. She
Yeah.
did.
So
And I
you
want you
guys
to,
don't.
yes.
Yeah. If
I
you
want
guys.
you to know that I'm still here, but I'm going to fix my microphone because it's
Yeah. Do your thing. Do your thing.
okay. I just want you to know I'm still
Um.
here.
Yeah.
She did. She did give us a lot of good questions.
Oh, she
But we want to take your guys' questions, but we could start with
one
uh,
of hers.
one of hers. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones I love that just gets right down to it is what are the red flags to look for? Okay, what are the red flags to look for? What are the red flags? What we'll do, Sister Tante, is let's. I'll give them two, and you give them two. Is that?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give them two. You want to give your two first, or you want me to go first?
Give my. Oh, okay. Well, let me think about it. Let's see. I was
Yeah,
working on my microphone, but
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Red flags. What
What
are
are
the
some red
red
flags?
flags?
Okay. So, as far as red flags that I would be looking for, um, number one is I would if a person can't control themselves,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And so by control, I mean what does this person do when they get angry? Okay? I'd be really interested, really curious. And this is the reason why these things take time.
Right.
Um, because you want life to unveil to you what you have. And when time is compressed, sometimes things can be hidden from you. Like the person can have characteristics that they can get hidden because you kind of rush things. But when things get time, now you can see what they're really about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some of you who are saying, well, I took a lot of time, and there were still some red flags I didn't see. Well, we do keep it real. Um, and maybe we'll be further on in the program where we can speak to this, but part of what can blind you to red flags is sexual activity. And we've
Right.
talked about this, before.
Yeah.
Um, So number one is them controlling themselves. Number two, another red flag is that they have trouble with empathy.
Mm-hmm.
They just can't get outside of themselves and they just cannot be empathic. They cannot sympathize with you. They cannot get into your experience. Those are two red flags. Over to you, sis.
Yes, I agree with you with your red flags. I was just, I don't know what jumps off to me. Number one as a red flag is, you know, getting to, and that's why I agree with you. It does take time to get to know someone. And so some of these red flags you may not, see or, because it takes a little bit of time. Because my first red flag, how do they get along with their family? Specifically well, I'm thinking of a male, right? So I'm thinking their mother, like if it's a male, how is his relationship with his mom? Like, or how does, and even though it doesn't mean the mom is perfect and that relationship is perfect, but how does he respond to this mother, whether she's a good mom or a not good mom? Like, where is the emotional maturity? Do you see that in a challenging situation? Or, yeah, because that's how they're going to, eventually deal with you when things are not always so easy. How do they deal and how do they deal with challenging situations? And you can really see that in those closer relationships, like with, um, again, I'm thinking of a male with their mom. Like, what is that relationship like, or how does he respond to her, even if she's not completely treating him the best or not doing the right thing? What is his response? Is there like Dr. White said, is there empathy? Is he extending grace? Is he loving and kind? Is he mature in how he handles challenging situation? And I mean, it can go for he or she. So those were my first red flags. And of course, the obvious ones. I mean, to us, I think this is kind of, it would be obvious, but maybe we should say the things that some people just, okay, this is number one. I know this doesn't really go to the red flag exactly, but this is what I hear a lot is, oh, I thought I could change him or her, or I thought I could help him or her. That's a red flag in the sense if you already think that, if you already have to think that you have to change somebody, that's a red flag that you're thinking that. Because first of all, you're not going to be able to change them. Only they can change themselves and God can change them. But that's not going to be you. And if you already think that you have to change someone, that's a red flag, that that person is just not compatible for you.
Yeah, good point. You know what's interesting about your comment about how does he respond to his mom,
Mm-hmm.
or how does she respond to her dad?
Right.
So clearly, that is a significant figure in the person's life. That's an important person.
Right.
Um, what I would be looking for, in addition to that, is how do they treat someone that's insignificant to them?
True. Excellent. That's true. Yeah.
I would contrast that. How do they treat the nagging little child, or or maybe it's someone, you go out to a restaurant. How do they treat the people helping out? How do they treat someone that they might not view as so obviously the truth is everyone is significant.
Yes.
um, but the idea is sometimes that's when people slip, is when for some reason
Yeah.
that so because sometimes they know that you're looking to see how they're going to treat the mother,
At the beginning.
or
At the
people that are like in a
beginning.
high standing.
True.
But how do you treat the people that maybe you don't feel are as significant?
And
That'll tell me a lot.
how do they act when no one is looking or when no one is, yeah. How do they act when
Exactly.
no one is looking?
Exactly. When the performance is over, you
Right.
know. So no, those are some really, really good red flags. Okay, what do we got? We have a question.
We do. How can a single person prepare to share their life with someone when they have already gotten used to being by themselves? Oh, wow.
And this
That
is
is
from Deborah.
yes, Deborah. That's a good question. That's a
De-
good question.
Deborah, put what age? Because it'd be nice to know how long they have been conditioning themselves to be by themselves. Um, you want to take the first stab at this?
Well, I'm from just watching a personal experience, not my personal experience, but my stepfather that passed away a few years ago. He had been single for 50 years before. He never, well, not completely single. He never got married. He was in one serious relationship, but for the most part, for the most of his life, he had been single with, without a wife. And so, getting married to my mom, they had a great relationship, but there was that learning curve for him, what it was like to really share a life with someone. Because when you're single, it's not that you're trying to be selfish, but you only have to worry about yourself. And then you bring somebody else into the picture. And now you don't just have to worry about yourself, you have to worry about the other person too, or you become one. So the two become one. Um, as far as things that you can do to prepare, wow. I to prepare to become or to be in a relationship, I'm assuming like for marriage. I mean, just I think this might sound, I think reading books about marriage and what it's like to have to come together to be one and to live your life with another partner. I think reading books is really good because really you cannot and I prepare for, you don't really know what marriage is going to be like until you get into marriage, but you can educate yourself on some of the things that we may even talk about, like in premarital counseling type of things we tell couples to look out for. So almost kind of preparing your mind to share a space, a mental space, an emotional space with another person, because when you're single, you don't have to do that. So preparing yourself to share that space emotionally and mentally, and reading things that are going to educate you on that. And again, you can only do your very best to try to prepare, but when you show up in a marriage and the person is actually physically living there and you're starting that relationship together, living under one roof, that it's just a different dynamic, but you can try your very best to prepare yourself in those ways. Dr. Wright?
No, no, well said. Well said. I think the operative word was preparation. Isn't
Mhm.
it interesting how if you're going to become a fighter pilot, if you were going to become just about anything you were going to become, you would know that you need to go through a training process.
Right.
You advocated for reading books, but what we're really talking about is skill acquisition. Like
Mhm.
you need to know what are the skills you need in order to have a functioning marriage. Um, Communication and the ability to communicate effectively is critical.
Mhm.
You know, like um, having some understanding of the the opposite sex in general is critical, and then understanding that person specifically. um I mean, there are so many tools though. How do you argue effectively? Huh. How do you what do you do with your emotions? You're laughing, Sister
Right.
Doctor. Yeah, like
Yeah.
there are skills that can be employed in order to be more effective in your relationship. But
Mhm.
I would say like the cornerstone of marriage is approaching it with a service mindset. That's the like I remember getting into marriage early on, and my focus was what can she do for me? You
Mm.
know, and let me as much, hey, what can she do for me? What is she bringing to the table?
Yeah.
That's your focus.
That's what you thought early on.
That's what I thought early on. And then, it shifted to this is a lot more fun if I focus on what I can bring to the table. If
Right.
I focus on being of service to her and watching what that does, and it of course inspires her, to be of service. But
Right.
and then real service ends up being sacrificial.
Mhm.
Real service is sacrificial. Sis, I got this cool quote that I noticed, right? That the thing that you want, the thing that you want, let's say a dream,
Mhm.
the dream you want is going to take more than you would like to give.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
But its fulfillment will also give you more than you could ever imagine.
Wow. Yeah.
Let's presume it's a good thing, by the way. Let's assume
Right.
it's a good thing, right?
Right. Mhm.
Like a good dream, a good thing, a good achievement. It will often take more than you're prepared, than you want to give. Not that you don't have it, but you didn't want to give that. So it's like the dream comes behind your back, says, "Hey, what do you have behind there?"
Mhm.
But when it's fulfilled, you then get to go behind the dreams back and say, "Hey, what do you have behind there?" And it gives a lot more. And I'm saying that's the case with marriage. You're supposed to approach it with a mindset of, I'm here to give.
Yes. Yes.
I'm here to understand what the person needs and learn how to give it. You
Mhm.
know, all qualifications, important. Everything that's congruent, obviously, with your values. But the goal is to really position yourself to do that. And too often I see people prioritizing, focusing on what they need, and then marriage becomes this competition. And
Mhm.
oh, it's no fun. It's no fun when you're competing like that. Oh my goodness, that gets old really fast. What are your thoughts, sis?
Yes. No. I agree with you.
Question.
We have another question, so I want to run to that. But I'm not quite sure, Clint. Maybe you could, like, what about obsessive behaviors as far as,
Yeah, you could unpack that a little bit
yeah,
more.
for us? And I was thinking, like, we're talking about singles, but we're already talking about marriage, meaning like we assume again because that everybody wants to get married. Everybody doesn't want to get married. They don't. Not everybody. I saw a question or I saw a comment. I think it's from
Well, I do like Amra's comment, which was she said, I literally took workshops, read books, did a study on love and respect while I was single. It helped a lot. Like
Wow.
preparation, like that process. I think Sister Tante was saying, like, look, man, this is like the start of your preparation.
Right.
But if you're serious, if you acknowledge that marriage is this thing that has a 40 to 50% divorce rate, and and sometimes with some subclasses, it goes up even more, then
Mhm.
you would say, let me employ as many, let's say, let me employ as many things as possible to make sure that I give myself a chance at succeeding. So it's going to be books. It's going to be getting mentors who can tell you how they've survived for a long time. It's going to be a lot of different things. So props.
Mhm.
But it's going to be getting therapy,
Right,
all kind of stuff.
right. And yeah,
Yeah.
yes. There's a question on here. So, did God place the desire to get married in our hearts? If so, why are so many out there struggling to find a spouse?
Example, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s are still waiting. Okay. Very, very good question. I believe, in scripture it says, God said it is not good for the man to be alone.
Right,
And for a lot of us, we were made for connection. There are literally some psychiatric conditions where people prefer to be alone. Okay.
right.
So there's some of that. So let's just say a detailed discussion on that is beyond what we're talking about right now. Let's just talk about the general. So there are some dynamics that are that are enforced today that can make it a challenge. And what I mean is, in our culture today, there are people who champion delay marriage, prioritize education, um, have fun, and worry about getting married later. That there's literally a mindset like that today. And I'm not saying it's the only mindset. I'm just saying there are people who are operating with that premise.
Right.
There are other people who they've seen so many marriages break up. Sometimes their parents, sometimes they've seen so marriage, they're jaded on the concept of marriage. And
Right.
they're like, you know what? It's not a priority to me.
And yeah, and there's just, God also, like, he says it's not good for man to be alone, but then also it's people have, he still gives it, but he still gives us the freedom of choice. So
Absolutely.
even if he could move on, and we're talking in the Christian realm, right? So even if he moves on someone's heart, uh, to, okay, like, this is the person I want for you, and he moves on the other person's heart, and he's wanting these two people to come together. God is not a God that controls us like robots. We still have choices. So maybe people are wanting to get married, but the other person for whatever reason doesn't, and they have that freedom of choice to choose that. So there's many different reasons why people don't either go late into age, and don't get married. Um, yeah, there's just many different things. Like you said, people do purposely do that. Like, they just focus on education and then worry about and getting their job and getting set up, and they want to do all of that. And there is wisdom in that. I'm not saying that's for everybody, and that's the way God's leading everyone. But then there's, because I was going to say, there's
No, but
okay, I was just gonna say, like, coming together and, like, not having a lot and having to struggle maybe at the beginning of your relationship or whatever, because you're either young and you decided to get married and you don't have education done and everything's not set up. I mean, that can be challenging, it can be stressful, but can it also be very bonding and connecting for the couple? I mean, that can go both ways, but it can also be very good to have everything set up, and it's can also be wise to get married, like to stay single longer and get married later, because the wisdom that you bring to the table when you do get married is very different in your older years. But go ahead.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the downside sometimes that people neglect with that strategy is, like, when you're in college or in some of these settings, it's like there's a greater likelihood you're going to meet someone
Right.
that maybe you're compatible with, right?
Yes.
And then I think people can sometimes underestimate how that changes drastically once you've left college, once you've left training, and you're not around the same density of people your age per se, and you go into the workforce, you don't have as much time. But that said, I do like the maturity element where
Oh,
you can be more mature and you know yourself a little better, and maybe you can even make a wiser choice. I think there is some wisdom to that.
yes.
Um,
I'm looking at Schoolwork's question. It says, what are the skills to living a single life till old age? I think it's kind of what I touched on a little bit in that answering that other question. You can bring a sense of maturity to the relationship, staying single longer. You get to know yourself, understand yourself a little bit better, so that and that goes with the maturity, bringing that to the relationship. And then you've lived life, you've gone through more experiences. Like, you're single and you've lived life, you might have gone through some challenges, some hardships, and so you grow from that. You grow from that experience, and you bring that to the table. But I think just a lot of maturity. I can say, when we got married, I was 24 years old. I mean, I'm almost 50. I'll be next year. I'll be 50. My birthday's in a
wow.
week. So I'm almost 50. I can say, of course, I'm so much mature now than I was 25 years ago when we got married. But we grew together. We grew together. So, but there's can be positives again. Like, I use my stepfather as an example, and my mom. They had an amazing relationship, right? He was already 50 years old, and so he had already been through some things. My mom, of course, had been married for all those years, and so she learned things too in that whole circle. But was a very emotionally stable and in control. He knew what he wanted. I mean, he waited that long, and so he really just poured into her, poured into the relationship. But he knew what he wanted, who he was, and he brought all that to the table. So those are some positive things that can happen, that you learn while you're single, and then you can bring that into a relationship if that's where God is leading you. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I think you said it really well. I think you said it really well as far as, understanding your dynamic, understanding, taking advantage of maturity. Um, yeah, I think you said it really well. I think this is a juicy question. When not actively looking for a partner, how can we manage long term our loneliness, isolation, and even if very active in church? Well, Arlene, thank you for that question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
so, so one of the things that's really interesting is your focus. Your focus. One thing we get to control as humans is where we direct our focus.
Hmm.
And one of the mistakes we can make is to direct our focus to what's missing rather than directing our focus to what's present. And one of the interesting experiences is when it's only when it's missing. So that thing might have been present, but now when it's missing, now you understand its significance because you hadn't attended to it while it was present. And what I'm saying is singleness should not be synonymous with loneliness.
Right. Right.
Singleness should not be synonymous with loneliness.
Right.
There are many other categories of life that can be quite full
Fulfilling.
despite not having a romantic relationship.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what's interesting is in the pursuit of those other many areas, it can often be a fantastic way to meet somebody.
Right. Yes.
You were going to say something?
Well, I was just thinking, when you what came to my mind when you said that is, we sometimes we think like being in a relationship with, And a romantic relationship is the only way that you cannot, is the only way that you will feel fulfilled and not feel lonely when, like you're saying, there's other uh, relationships or other things that are very fulfilling. So, when someone's asking specifically, like, what can I do? I mean, having a community of friendships, other relationships that are fulfilling. And I mean, like hobbies that you like to do, and you do those hobbies with other people, and you're active in these groups, and you're being a part of things, you're doing things, and like Dr. White said, in that time, I mean, this is the space, learning to appreciate the space that you're currently in, and living in the present and being happy in the present while you're doing that, and building these other relationships, friendships, doing activities, hobbies, other things, I don't know, anything to get together with other people, so that you're not alone, but you're being very fulfilled. You possibly could meet someone within those, as you're doing these things.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about is the 7 vitals of a person's life. And what it affords you is a number of areas to build value in your life, a number of areas. So whether it's, so she mentioned church, but, spirituality is much broader than church, actually.
Yes.
But then there are other relationships. Sometimes it's parents that you have an opportunity to connect with. Sometimes sometimes it might be younger children, or other children in your sphere of existence. Then, of course, there's resources. Then, of course, there's professional development. There's your life purpose. And here's the other thing, Arlene. Heaven forbid you don't develop the skill of entertaining yourself and take that into a relationship, because you would be surprised how much loneliness can occur in a relationship, in a romantic relationship.
That's true. That's true. People feel us. That's excellent point, Dr. White. Excellent point. People can become isolated within a romantic relationship because they're not feeling that connection any longer. So no, you're right.
Or they haven't learned that, look, romantic relationship or not, at times we're going to be apart.
Right.
So I have to know, I have to learn how to entertain myself. And when it looks like a person is having a good time with themselves, that's attractive.
Right.
That's attractive. That will actually pull people towards you. And when it looks like you're having a horrible time by yourself, that's a repellent. That's a repellent. People are drawn to parties.
Yeah. Or just, yeah.
And so that's true for the possible suitors, but it's also true for your spouse. If your spouse is seeing you constantly mopey and you're an energy drain, they're not going to be drawn to spend time with you, and you're going to find yourself alone. So during the single period, you can condition yourself to really be able to entertain yourself and develop yourself. And that process can at times be very attractive.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to understand that.
I don't, because there's questions and I don't want to take up too much time. We'll go right to the next question.
Okay.
And I think this is a very good question. I do not know how to say, okay, well, this is a young man, because he stated it's a young man, but I don't want to mess up the name. But as a young Christian man, how can I flirt with someone with properly and godly? Can I flirt as a single person? So I'm going to go ahead, Dr. White, take this one. I'll do a follow-up on you, but I just want to see what you're.
No, thank you for this one. Okay. Well, first and foremost, I hope you're flirting as a single person, because that's first and foremost. You shouldn't be flirting otherwise. Now the next thing is, in order to flirt as a Christian man, in a godly fashion, I would say check your motives. Exactly. Check your motives. What are your motives? What are the intentions in your heart when you approach that person? Because one way or another, you're going to communicate that. But if you're wanting to flirt in a dignified fashion, check your motives. When you're approaching her, Are you approaching her for something that's dignified, that's godly, that's Christian? Are you wanting to get to know her?
Right.
Are you wanting to bring value to her, or are you trying to take value away? Check your motives. I would say, and that would and make sure your motives align with values you're happy practicing in the daytime.
Right. And I 100% agree with you. And definitely check your motives. Like, what are your intentions? Um, no, you said, I don't believe that you should be flirting just as a hobby or just in passing. Like, you don't want to get the name, like, oh, he's just a big flirt. Like, he flirts with everyone. Like, no, if you feel like if this young lady, you're serious about, getting to know her better, because what you've seen, you've observed her, and what you've observed makes you want to get to know her a little bit better. So, some what you might call flirting, or just a way to kind of let her know that I'm a little interested, but you're doing that with the intention to really get to know her in a more meaningful way. I think that's okay. But just to flirt, just to be flirting with every random pretty woman, or just with women, period, no, that's not good. Because then you're going to get a reputation of just being a big flirt, and nobody's going to take you serious. They're not going to take you serious.
Take that advice very seriously. Take it. Yeah, I mean, it's about being mature and intentional, and how do you want to be perceived? So
Right.
that's really good counsel. Okay, how much weight should one put on dating? You want to take this one first?
Yeah. When I mean, like, I'm assuming, should we date a lot? Is what they're saying. Wow. I mean, I'm going to pause and just want to, like, make sure I'm going to answer this correctly, or the way I should answer it. Yes, I personally believe that dating is important. Should we date a lot? No, I believe that you should, if you're following the Christian path, and you're following, like, God leading you in this dating situation while you are single. I don't necessarily think you have to date a lot, but you just date according to God's will for you in your life. And so that, I don't know, that may end up being what, a lot is relative, right? But dating is important, because you have to, of course, get to know the person. And then sometimes you might start to date someone and you realize that's not it. And so you see the red flags, so you get out of that situation. And then maybe a few months later on, you are, you're praying about it. And then another person comes into your life. And so you start dating them. And, so it can be, it can be fluid. It can be fluid until you find the person that God wants you to be with, and you just say, okay, I'm really focusing in on that. But you have to date some people to know what you don't want, right?
Yeah. What I would add to that is dating is a skill.
Mm-hmm.
There is some skill involved, and there are people who at times they'll only date someone that, let's say, they're very attracted to, or what have you. And there's something to be said for giving people a chance, because it's a good chance to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you've gotten some comfort with dating, then it's like you won't come across as awkward, and maybe turn the person away that you're really interested in. The problem becomes when, like when the dating is occurring in the context of what the world calls dating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem, really. But if dating is more focused on learning who the person is, and really getting your questions answered, because what you're really trying to understand is this a person who would meet a criteria, would meet the criteria
Mm-hmm.
to be a person of value and actually make a meaningful contribution to your goals, including your spiritual goals. Like
Right.
that's what you're really trying to figure out. And is this the person I can make a contribution to their life? And I think we can lose sight of that when the dating moves into more, physical realm. So, so yeah, it's good, I think, to practice and to learn,
Mhm.
provided you don't get distracted. Um, so that's what I would say.
Yes. Um, are there learning, I'm assuming there's, Pam is saying, are there classes, date classes, or can you learn how to date? Is that what she's asking?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Are there learn to date classes? Is what I think
Oh,
she's asking.
okay. There it
Are
goes.
there
Are
learn to
there learn to
date
date
classes?
classes? Hmm.
So I have a workshop that I entitled "Don't
Okay.
Say a Word."
Okay.
One, but two, I think there are therapists who do pre-engagement counseling.
That,
Pre-engagement counseling.
well, yeah. Oh, yes. Pre-engagement.
Pre-engagement.
Yes. There's
Because
pre-engagement. I've done some of those.
because I don't like premarital counseling as much because it's like here they are
They've already
planning
gotten
the
engaged, right?
wedding and saying, well, do you think we should do this?
But I think pre-engagement and dating are different. Like even learning how
You have a
to
point.
date,
You got a point.
on how
You
to
have a point.
date. Do we have
So
access to how to date classes? I don't know about how to date classes.
if you
I
look on YouTube, of course you can find some stuff that'll teach you stuff on dating. Like just
true.
about anything you want to learn, you can find information on YouTube nowadays. And of course, there'll be an influencer teaching on that topic.
Right. That's true. That's true. I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
Um, goodness, I mean, my experience was probably just like many other people. It was trial and error and learning.
yeah.
I can say, but going back to, I think, Pam's first question, the value of dating. By the time I met my husband and by the time he met me, um, he had dated more than I had, but I had dated though. but we both knew. But when I met him, I was in that state that you were talking about. I was very happy. I was having my own party with myself, and that was because of God. But I was having my own. I was in a very happy place just with myself, and I told God I don't need anybody else in my life until it's that person, because I had been through the dating cycle and some were good, but the one before I met my husband, I guess it's a little specific, but the one I met before my husband was bad. It was a horrible situation. And so when I got out of that relationship, I knew that
Mhm.
I would just rather be single with Jesus until I meet the person. And my life was happy. So going back to some of these questions and comments that people made earlier, you can be very happy and single until that right person comes. You don't have to be down and out because everybody else is in a relationship and you're not in one yet. When the time is right, when that right person comes, it'll be so worth the wait.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So worth the wait. Okay. Let's see. Do you have any pointers for men, women who want to meet other singles, potential partners, but are challenged by being shy or introverted? Because I'm not shy or introverted.
I got a tip. I got a tip for you though. I got a
Okay.
tip. So what'll make you nervous, whether it's public speaking or it's talking to someone in a social setting, if you want to skyrocket your anxiety, keep asking yourself, how do I feel?
Yeah.
Keep asking yourself, how do I feel? Keep focusing on your heartbeat. If you keep focusing on that, that's a nice way to skyrocket your anxiety.
Hmm.
Instead, what I would suggest is focus on the other person. Okay? Focus on learning about the other person. If you're asked a question, focus on trying to be as clear as possible to satisfy answering the question. Make it about the other person. One of the things that makes people shy, introverted, and nervous is an obsessive focus on
on
themselves
themselves.
and a focus
Yes.
on their internal experience. And this helped me a lot with public speaking. So I'm telling you the key. It was starting to focus on, no, is the message clear?
Mm,
Forget about how I feel. Is the
right.
message
It's
clear?
clear.
Are
Right.
they getting it?
Yes.
Um, and what's their experience? One of the other things is sometimes you go to a function and there's somebody else that's also like nervous, and you can hang out with that person. But I have found that it's wonderful to get out of yourself and learn about the person, and people like to talk about themselves. So
Right.
learn about what they care about. Hey, what are you passionate about? What do you do? And if you're not doing it, what do you want to do?
Hmm.
And a lot of times you'll find that people will open up. You say, no, doc, the person was closed off. Then you move on to the next person because you're right. There, it doesn't always go well, but that
Right.
can be a good tactic. What
And
would
I
you?
think, well, I was going to say the first part of that question is, do we have advice on where they can meet uh, other singles? And like this is I want to say, I mean, this is a Christian program on a Christian platform. So I'm saying most, people who are watching, not everybody is Christian, right? So a lot of people go to, I mean, what the world does is they go to, they go to bars, they go to clubs, all these different places. And so I definitely can't recommend that is the best place, to meet someone. But there are Christian single platforms and programs that are designed for singles to meet people, and so that could be a possible place that you can meet someone. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts about like Christian dating apps or even just dating apps? Period.
I
Do you have a thought? Do you have thoughts on that?
I do have thoughts. Like
Okay.
I've heard people have some good experiences. I've heard people have some bad experiences. What
Okay.
what I was going to suggest as to good places to go
Mm-hmm.
is places involved in self-development.
Yes.
So like I I I wouldn't frequent bars. That's just not my scene. And clubs, that also doesn't work for me because it's like I can't understand. The noise is super loud, it's super dark. It doesn't make any sense to me. But places where people are bettering themselves, conferences, um, working out. Again,
I was just gonna say the gym.
the gym, like people are bettering themselves.
Mhm.
You get these marathon events, you get settings where people are getting better, taking a class, learning something, like
Right.
developing a skill. A lot of times these can be really, really great places where you can meet other people who are bettering themselves, and then starting a book club, like starting things that will attract people.
Right.
um I think those are like, if you're going to put intention in it, like find out where people are bettering themselves, and that could be a good place where you're going to meet the kind of person you're looking for.
Right. Right. Yes, I totally agree. I think we just answered that one. Where are some good places to meet Christian singles when your church is virtual? Oh, like our church? And there isn't singles group in your local church. Well, I think some of the things that Dr. White just said is a good way to do that. But it's something that Living Manna Online Church has to think about. Maybe starting a singles ministry, a virtual singles ministry. Um, we'll see. That could be coming up soon. I have to say, our numbers are pretty high today. We advertised that we're talking about singles, and a lot of people have jumped on. So this is definitely a topic that we feel like gets
A lot of
missed.
attention.
Yeah, that it needs attention. I'm seeing other questions in the chat. Definitely gonna have to do a part two with this one because we're not gonna get to all these, but um, this is a good one. This is a good one, and it's not. Let's see if I can put it up there. Uh, can we put it up there? It's Daisy's question. Uh, Amber, can we get that one up there? Let's.
What does a healthy relationship with one's sexuality look like while single?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Um,
She sounds like she's trying to politely ask a question. You know?
You-
Um, what does healthy relationship with one sexuality look like while single? Um, you know, you want to tackle it first or what?
I think I'll piggyback on you. I'm gonna let you tackle
So
it
now
first.
check this out. Let me just put it out there. All right. Let me just put it out there. Um, one of the most powerful things in human existence is sexual energy.
Right.
Just put it out there. Okay. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is not learning how to harness it.
Yes.
So that, like, so many young people, rather than like focusing that sexual energy into building something,
Mm-hmm.
building a baby that can turn around and take care of them,
Mm,
instead, they get involved with sex, create a baby that they have to take care of.
right.
Okay. When it's supposed to be the flip. Like, that is a lot of energy. If
Mm-hmm.
you've ever watched young people, if you've ever watched them, the amount of energy is off the charts. Like, if they put that energy into building something, it's amazing. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you look at a Steve Jobs or a what's his name, or Bill Gates, or a lot of people, they actually, if they got passionate about something when they were young,
Mm-hmm.
it creates so much. So what I'm saying is, people feel almost like what they need to do is be sexual, rather than understanding that, look, I can put this energy into other things.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal, premise. Because she says, like, because if you're single, theoretically, um, I would be focused on other things personally.
Right. Yes. And I think like you said, there's still that sexual energy that and you're saying to harness that and to even to understand what that the purpose of that sexual energy is. And this is something I heard in a sermon. Well, actually, it wasn't a sermon, it was a talk, kind of like what we're doing now that somebody shared. That God created sex for connection, right? Connection with your spouse, for your wife, for your husband. And then he gave us those sexual desires so that that will drive us to that connection. Because if he created sex but there was no desire for sex, if he didn't create those desires in us, then we wouldn't go to that connection space the way that he wants us to, so that it could reconnect the husband and wife. So that is like where that's why God created sex. So even though we have this sexual energy in this single space, like Dr. White said, to harness that and to put that into other things until it's time for it to be in that marital space, is the best way to live your single life. And so understanding that, be like, okay, these what I'm feeling, what is, what I, those feelings that you have, they have a purpose, but they have a purpose for a certain time, that's going to be benefit you and be a blessing to you. And when we go into that space before the time, it can cause a lot of issues in
Problems.
your life and a lot of problems.
I think of the illustration of Jacob, where Jacob decides that he wants Rachel. And so Laban tells him, all right, work for her for 7 years. And Jacob is like, the years felt like days, because he knew at the end of it, he was going to have what he wanted. And this is what I mean by the energy can be used for good things. It can be used for good things.
Right.
And until you get into the context that it was meant for a marital context.
Yeah.
Sex literally addicts you to the person. It
That's
can.
what
It
that's,
can.
yeah.
And so, if imagine being addicted to the wrong person, I'm sure you can see the danger of that. It's one thing to be addicted to alcohol. It's another thing to be addicted to something that can pick up a phone and call you. That's that's a whole other level.
That's a whole nother level.
That's
Oh,
a whole other level. Like, you knowing you need to not be associated, and at the same time you're addicted to it, and it can call you. like you're creating some very, very powerful dynamics. So, just be aware. And I'm not saying it always happens that you always get addicted, but it's
Right.
it's a powerful force. That's all.
Yes. It is, you know what? We're pretty good with our time. We're a little bit over our hour just by 1 minute, but this went by so fast, and we kind of knew because we'd never covered this topic, or you don't hear about it that much. And by the numbers that I'm seeing tonight, that this is definitely a hot topic, and we're going to continue. So there's going to be a part two because we still have lots of questions to answer. Please bring your questions back to the next Mental Health Monday, because we will continue this conversation. We're nowhere near exhausting this yet. So, and we can see that it's huge for many, for young, for middle age, for older. It's huge. And then when you bring it into the Christian realm and to church, it's even can be more challenging at times because you're trying to live your life
Are we,
and the way that God wants you to live your life. Go ahead,
are
Dr.
we
Wall.
going out with a bang with this question?
You want to do one last one?
Yeah,
Let's
like
see.
that's in front of us.
Okay.
She said, "Hello. Please explain the concept of soul ties and soulmates, and if they're biblical concepts." So, in my studies, I have not come across this concept of soul ties and soulmates. I will say this: I have come across the concept of sexual activity causing oxytocin to be released, and
Mm,
oxytocin is the trust chemical, so that you have dopamine that addicts you to the person, and then you have oxytocin that makes you want to trust the person. And so that's very binding. That's
yes.
very binding. That's how you can end up bound to a person. Your neurobiological soup is pushing you towards this relationship. And this is why scripture is so clear that it should be kept in the context of a marital relationship. Um, so, so that's my response to that. And if they're biblical concepts, I haven't come across it in scripture.
Yeah, I have never seen that either. I definitely believe that God has a specific person for each and every one of us. If marriage is in His plan for you, that there is someone out there that God has, and so um, like people ask me all the time, and I'll say this way just to make it a little practical. Like people say, "Do you love being a pastor's wife?" And I say, "No." And I'll clear it up because I know I have a lot of, but I said I love being Ivor's wife. And if he's a pastor, then I love my role as a pastor's wife because I love him and I love the fact that he's the one that I believe God had for me. And so I love it for that. Like if
I
God,
laugh because you're so honest. You're like just
I am, but no, and I can tell you, I mean, for my Living Manna Church people and members, I love being your pastor's wife. Um, but but it's not like some people just, well, I don't know. I've met people who just say like, "Oh, I've always wanted to be a pastor's wife." I'm like, "You grew up always wanting to be a pastor's wife?" Like that's just like so not who I thought I was going to do or be. But when I met my husband, it's like, oh yeah, I love being a pastor's wife because I love him. If God forbid, if anything happened to me, I can't say that I would happen to me, happen to him, God forbid. I would not go chase after another person that's a pastor just to be a pastor's wife. But I do believe, tying this back into the question, I do believe that he is the person that God has on this earth for me. And that was, to be a blessing, but also to better me as well. And hopefully I'm a blessing to him to better him as well. So I do believe God has that specific person for you. And it could feel like a soulmate, but the Bible doesn't use those terms. I don't know about soulmate, but just that person that edifies you and you edify them.
yeah. My wife certainly makes me think that believe in the concepts of soulmates because it's hard to imagine someone else other than her. So I mean, on the one hand, I'm like, come on, it's 3 billion of the opposite sex. Come on, I mean, just let's. So I mean, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, I get it. Jody, just because you're a board member, we're just gonna some of the reading material I would suggest. I love stuff by Gottman. So he
Oh
talks
yeah.
about why marriages succeed or fail. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's really helpful. And
Got me.
I love Michelle Weiner Davis, Divorce Busting.
Yes.
Those are two that come to mind. I
Yes.
like
Good
her
stuff.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I use both of their stuff in with my couples.
Yeah.
You actually introduced me to her, and since you introduced me to her, then I started using some of her stuff with couples. But I've been using Gottman because Gottman is just proven to be amazing. Her stuff is really really good, really really good.
Absolutely.
By the way, I am not Amra's so well, but she is our producer and she's a very good friend. But that's not who I am, as you guys know.
Okay.
But we are definitely we're out of time for today, but do please share this link. There's many of you that jumped on today that I believe maybe have been your first time. We didn't ask. Let us know. Was this your first time listening to Mental Health Mondays? Are these? I mean, I'm assuming because of the numbers, these are topics that you guys like. But definitely share this link on your social media. Come back. We'll definitely. Hey, can we put up a way for all of our first time viewers? Amber, can we put up how they can get signed up so they will know when we go live for anything for Living Manna Church and for Mental Health Mondays? So, okay, this is what you guys do. If you're not signed up, please text LMOC to 84576, and then you'll get all our real-time text alerts, announcement reminders, everything so that you can know when we're going live with Mental Health Mondays and other programs for Living Manna Church. And so bring yourself back, bring a friend with you, tell people, other single people that you know, that this is what we're talking about, because we definitely have many more questions within this topic that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface. So we definitely invite you back to come back, and we thank you for watching and viewing today. So please, again, share this link on your social media. And until next time, God bless you and have a wonderful evening.
Till
All
next
right.
time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.